That was brilliant. Can we welcome now to the Bababa stage the wonderful Louie Buford, who is going to tell us about Rubber Band Girl. So give it up for Louie Buford.
Yes, the actual title, Rediscovering Kate Bush. I thought Rubber Band Girl would be more ambiguous. Okay, 3 exposures to Kate Bush in my younger and more vulnerable years was enough to confirm that this woman's work was not for me. The first exposure was when my 7-year-old sister repeatedly played Wuthering Heights at full volume in our shared bedroom for weeks on end. The second was the Sensual World's rather trite appearance in the Extras Christmas special. And the third was the perplexing usage of the Hounds of Love in my after-school drama club production when I was 14. Now, each instance felt just intrusive and stultifying. You know, if it wasn't affecting my aesthetic taste, it was certainly testing my patience. Consequently, I concluded that her music was, it was melodramatic, it was shrill-voiced, it was sappy, it was irritating, histrionic, overly effeminate, just pretentious noise. Furthermore, her fans were undoubtedly suffering from a universal lapse of taste. Of course, the context of these experiences, influenced that perspective, but, hasty assumptions have long been a lifelong forte of mine, hence why I decided in my mid-20s to move to York to study education 200 miles away. The first year was manageable, the second, terrible. I made no friends or even, any real acquaintances. I was often immensely perplexed and frustrated with the conduct of my peers, and I soon felt the drive of analytical reading and the pursuit of wisdom degrade daily. To top it all off, a global pandemic was starting to occur in my second year, so interactive learning was forced online to Zoom. And when I think of Zoom these days, the Zoom classrooms, the stultifying nature of it, I think of E.M. Forster's a line from The Machine Stops by E.M. Forster. The machine is much, but it is not everything. I see something like you in this plate, but I do not see you. I hear something like you through this telephone, but I do not hear you. I only give a general idea of people. The imponderable bloom declared by an old philosophy to be the actual essence of intercourse was rightly ignored by the machine. I deferred my studies for a year. I thought things would be better after lockdown. They weren't. I nearly had a nervous breakdown in one seminar, and I came back from another in just a complete state of bewilderment. In fact, I went straight to bed afterwards. That was the first and only time, I hope, that I ever slept for 24 hours straight. I mean, soon enough, I was the kind of student I started out despising, but I figured that I had enough humility, at least, to save my tutors the hassle of that, so I quit. That was painful. That was failure. That was humiliation. That was, a profound waste of money. But I did leave with faith in the liberal arts and for reading for pleasure. No one needs formalized education for that. So despite my bitterness, my perplexity, and my, state of gloom, I wanted to at least honor something of the initial pursuit. So I fell into reading for pleasure, into imaginative literature. It seemed appropriate, and since I was in Yorkshire, it felt very appropriate to read the Brontes. That's the parsonage right there, where all the siblings lived for most of their lives. And before long, I was reading criticism and biographical works about them. And it was clear that this wasn't distraction, this was kind of an indirect reflection. I saw my plight of disappointments, I saw my plight, my disappointments reflected by them. And I recognized the frustration with their ostensive lack of achievement related to the isolation they all at one time suffered. And I felt humbled by their stoic conviction and literary brilliance. There's one poem I particularly enjoy by Emily Bronte there, which I'm not going to read for sake of time, but it's called The Old Stoic, something that gave me a lot of strength back in the days of gloom. I was all about the Brontes, and I liked letting people know that, so of course my housemate was particularly well informed. That Charlie was one of those people who sincerely believes that music peaked in the mid to late 20th century. He enjoyed, belting the Beatles, Simon and Garfunkel, and Elton John out from his Bluetooth speaker in the evenings as I read and he cooked, or, we played video games. So his general musical taste and his awareness of my enthusiasm for a legendary author meant the inevitable appearance of Wuthering Heights one night. I remember him saying, "I'm sure you know this one." Of course, I recognized it from the first high keys and the trancey chimes, and I instinctively winced. This has nothing to do with Emily's Wuthering Heights, the actual text. This was a musicless environment of the deepest vengeance and spite, of relentless abuse and corrupt conscience. This time, however, I was assailed by a reluctant affection. And they were all invoked by those first notes. It wasn't just that I recognized them for how I remembered the song, but I recognized them on something of a formal level. I'd never noticed that the chorus was detectable in those first notes. Not explicitly, not an exact structural replication, but a suggestion. It was as if the song itself was whispering, "Remember me? It's me. I'm Kathy. I've come home." Tonally, the song was enacting an important aspect of that text I was being so pedantic about. The suggestion itself was ghostly. It was forecasting what was to come and echoing what it had been. And that motif, as motifs do, repeated. It was ongoing, just like Kathy's unfortunate and unintended influence, posthumous and otherwise, on Heathcliff. So I listened on more intently than I ever had. And though leisurely, the melody seemed utterly tumultuous, going up and down, complementing the imagery and semantic content of the lyrics. The ongoing and overwhelming hills surrounding Bradford as if moving between extremes of overwhelming devotion and hatred. The lyrics themselves more overtly signify this dichotomy of emotion and action, which is at play in the original narrative through, a very simple stylistic act of foregrounding. It's called a syntactic parallelism. I hated you, I loved you too. And that's used to highlight the simultaneous existence of hate and love, as if they're combining together to result in, cruelty. Passionate, unrelenting, and devoted cruelty. Paradoxical and incestuous. Then there's the use of a naturally ambiguous term, possess. How could you leave me when I needed to possess you? It suggests more than so-called possessive love, that which covets, but a kind of control of Heathcliff's very substance, the phantasmic sharing of a single soul. As the original text has Kathy say, "He's more myself than I am. My great miseries have been Heathcliff's miseries. If all else perished and he remained, I should still continue to be. If all else remained and he were annihilated, the universe would turn to a mighty stranger. I should not seem part of it." And that sentiment, Kate directly reflects with her rendering of it in a less formal register. It gets lonely on the other side from you. I pine a lot. I find the lot falls through without you. Now, I can't claim to have a comprehensive understanding of Emily's masterpiece, but what is clear, at least, is that Kate Bush and I shared a similar intrigue and respect for her work and the dynamic between the two characters therein. As John Fowle said of Emily, nothing can equal the extraordinary literary and very personal vitality, the true uniqueness of Emily Bronte. And by the way, guess who shares Emily Bronte's birthday? And guess who had the name of Kathy with her closest family members? So anyway, I listened to Wuthering Heights that night with completely new affection and a more pleasant reminiscence, remembering how my sister sycophantly listened and danced to the song. And I still found it cheesy in tone, but the uniqueness and variety of its mood and technique completely overshadowed that quality. I remember announcing to Charlie, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm actually enjoying the song. I sat there for a moment just relishing the tangible transformation of my response. I asked that we listen to it again, and I bathed in the splendid mellifluousness of the piece, how it paired a haunting declaration with a warmly triumphant melody. I thought to myself, it cannot get better than this one. This is about a famous piece of fiction. The dance is really silly. I mean, I bet you if I just look up the music videos on YouTube, we shall see that I was right in my initial assumptions about the quality of this artist. So I scrolled down and saw the man with the child in his eyes looks from around the same period. What the hell, I'll bite. And a bite became voracious feeding. I was soon repeatedly listening to another early Kate Bush single with delicious, enthusiastic curiosity. I mean, perhaps more importantly this time, I was watching in that manner too. I mean, this had little of the silliness I initially perceived in the Wuthering Heights dance. I was immediately of the opinion that this was a physical performance of delicate intellect and unrestrained creativity. I mean, I'd had my head turned to the potential wonders of dance back in sixth form, though since then I'd never been enamoured by that fine art of my own accord, and it turns out that this sudden rediscovery of Kate Bush was to be that first enamorment. She clearly knew the fine potential of body language, how captivating and meaningful even the minor accentuation of usually more sedate uses of the body can be. And after seeing a production Kate Bush, when she was younger, 1976 was around, when she saw Lindsay Kemp's Flowers, she became confident that this held the key to greater realization of her ideas. She had this to say about her mindset after seeing it. I thought that if one person could actually produce the music themselves and give him or herself physically at the same time, then you'd be getting double energy coming from one person. It could only be stronger, and I thought, golly, that's what I want to do. And I can't help including a quote from John Bush, one of her brothers. And he said of that moment when she came back from the show, it seemed to me that Kathy had come back as Kate. She was given 18 months for what was essentially maturation after initial interest in her from EMI. And I can't overstate how well she used those 18 months. With them, she set about sharpening her intuition for movement through attendance to the classes of a few performers and instructors. I mean, prior to these, she had no formal qualifications in dance at all. I mean, there was Adam Darius. He created a fusion of dance and mime, essentially. According to him, Kate was rigorously inquisitive about the craft as well as hardworking. Her abilities and knowledge were further honed by, well, Lindsay Kemp himself. And he, in turn, had a large influence on David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust, and that was one of Kate Bush's early musical inspirations and continuing idols. She said of Kemp's training that she was taught the expression of emotion rather than what she saw as straightforward illusion of traditional mime, saying that Lindsay taught me that you can express with your body. When your body is awake, so is your soul. When he left for Australia after only 6 months of her lessons, she went to the classrooms of Arlene Phillips. I think she choreographed for Starlight Express, that's right. Saturday Night Fever as well. So for the man with the child in his eyes, Kate uses what she learned and studied so confidently, having mime and dance interplay with the lyrics she wrote at 13 years old, and that was one of her apparently 2 songs a day writing habit of her youth. Different imagery and new emotion are all being evoked and suggested by her ability. The widening of her eyes lends more of a feeling of danger than the lyrics would suggest on their own. The dance's sudden change from the relaxed, confident, almost smug expression of perceived reciprocated love to the jolted, more timid and on-guard countenance, which accompanies a crucial turning point in the song. Then there's broader choreography and camera work to consider for what they express. There's a moment when the camera pulls back and Kate stretches her limbs out from a sort of tucked position. It's like she's a blooming plant, stretching to meet the sun, and that lends a sense of confident pride to the declaration that nobody knows about my man. And then she conducts a well-controlled and leisurely drop of her back and limbs to take a lying position, and that gives the illusion of herself floating down to the ground from a height, as if now occupying a place in a new dimension of romantic idealism. And then there's the example of when Kate transitions from a verse to a chorus. She uses her body to make a sweeping gesture, like that of a wave, as if she's making a clean slate, just room for a new development of the narrative therein, as well as the mood of the song. And that's made more relevant by the lyrics themselves. The titular character, who is emotionally characterized as idealized and almost spectre-like, is related semantically to the ocean. The sea could be a representation of the mystery of passion, emotional intimacy that the speaker feels. It's all rather good. And she often plays with just subverting expectations. A lot of her songs employ repetition with the purpose of deepening tone and achieving greater textual variety. As she herself said, I like the hypnotic quality of nursery rhyme repetition. A lot of traditional music has that basis. Tumbling, rolling, drowning throughout. It's very primeval. In The Big Sky and Babushka, layers are both taken away and added that progressively intensify those senses of optimism, potential, and daring. They're never uniform. It's a kind of musical party that happens in both songs. Different vocal textures come to accompany each other, and that's especially befitting of the thematic nature of The Big Sky. That big sky, that ambiguous figure, it represents all potential and hope to me. It implies the process of a very grateful new journey, relinquishing previous circumstance and matters of old concern to engage with possibility instead. And that might seem like a heavy contrast to the two songs that precede it, which are direct references to kind of neurotic feelings about love and relationships. But I think the album as a whole, the album being Hounds of Love, can be very much said to be about the deep, challenging longing for more positive circumstance and mental equilibrium. And I do wonder if Kate was intentionally relying on that figuration of the challenging nature of love, that being a fierce hound as an intertextual force. It's often been used as a metaphor in that way. And of course, Kate Bush is a figure of intertextuality. There's just a few examples there of where songs have been inspired by literature. The Infant Kiss, that was The Turn of the Screw, and The Innocents. You have Get Out of My House, which, funnily enough, was inspired by The Shining, for obvious reasons. Yes, we're just gonna skip a few slides for the sake of time here. It can be argued that love and relationships form some of the cause of Kate Bush's themes. And that's not just in the romantic sense, as I used to expect. The types explored can vary from relationships that are parental, and like in Cloudbursting, and Mother Stands for Comfort. And then there are those with technology, like in Deeper Understanding from Ariel. And then there are sexual relationships, as in Rhapsody in Blue and Wow. And then there are those relationships with social institutions and principles, like in Army Dreamers. I quite like it when she explores the psychologically violent nature of relationships, which is why, along with most of the world, I seem to hold Running Up That Hill and Babushka in high regard. So if it isn't already clear, I binged Kate Bush material heavily after that night. For 2 months, every walk, every meal, and every passive browse of the web was accompanied by her music. It would steal me on the way toward a job training scheme that I hated and soothe me through the stress of it. I couldn't get enough of the diversity of her catalogue, nor her thorough embracing of theatricality and multiple art mediums to inform her work. Moreover, I found that essence of humility and exteriority of her work just endearing. It's rare that she utilizes her own personality and her own experiences for material, and I love that in an artist, when you can sense that that they're not looking at the self for the expression of joy, or they're able to make sure that the world's inherent strangeness of history and circumstance, its great intrigue, are honored through their entertaining and skillful artistic communication. It reminds me of T.S. Eliot's essay, A Tradition in the Individual Talent. There's a great summary on poetryfoundation.org, which said all that. I'm not going to go into that. But basically, the focus on the external rather than the self's experience for the sake of poetry. In an interview with Colin Irwin for Melody Maker, this was easily nearly 40 years ago, she was quoted as saying herself, "I rarely write personal songs from experience. I often find myself inspired by unusual, distorted, weird subjects as opposed to things that are straightforward." And there's nothing wrong with art for self-expression. I just enjoy when I can sense that this is a secondary concern to the occupation with external objects and ideas. That's when my fanaticism was pretty much complete. I've now got... That's a picture of a bunch of books on my desk, which inspire me to write better. I look to that for just a little motivation. And Kate Bush's collected lyrics, How to Be Invisible, is in there. She's the only musician in that pile, which I'm happy to announce. yeah, I was reawakened to the splendor of the performing arts, basically. So much so that I decided to reacquaint myself with the theatre when I moved back to Sussex from Yorkshire. I actually took part in a production of The Girl on the Train in the Old Town in Hastings, just down the road from David, actually. Which was, well, to put it simply, it was a life-changing experience. We had a very tough final dress rehearsal, and we were blind to our own exhaustion and, the contextual nature of our mishaps. We went out, got drunk, went to karaoke, and I sang Babushka, which is why my friends now call me Babushka rather affectionately, and I'm very happy to be associated with a woman who reminded me of the joy and awe of theatricality. It's rather nice. Yes, just in the interest of time, I'm going to wrap it up as soon as I can. She claimed once, a long time ago, this was back before she'd even considered being a musician, she considered the occupation of psychiatry. She was quoted as saying, I had this idea of helping people, I suppose. I found the idea of people's inner psychology fascinating. Music is very much a therapeutic thing. It really is like a therapy, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, especially when it comes to her work and the effect it had on me. I mean, to paraphrase her own lyrics, I never really understood her because I never really tried. I love her better now. And I'm thankful for her work. I mean, my rediscovery of it invoked a rediscovery of a part of me. It gently reminded me that there are indeed wrong times to engage with matter of any nature. But those shouldn't define your experience and perspective forever. That's the right to, the right to change your mind, as well as the opportunities, the necessity to try again should be cherished. Because to engage with what is unfamiliar, to excite and extend yourself, to ensure freshness of experience and growth, that's an act of liberation. Yeah. By happy coincidence, on the 31st of August, on the West Hill in Hastings, there is, in fact, the most Wuthering Heights day ever. A bunch of people in red dresses are gonna perform the entire song and dance. So if you are free, come along. If I'm free, I'm certainly going to be there in a red dress. And that is how I rediscovered Kate Bush. Thank you very much.